Like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get new video updates.
What's the situation on the border? After months of military build-up and brinkmanship on Ukraine's border, Russia is ratcheting up pressure on its ex-Soviet neighbor, threatening to destabilize Europe and draw in the United States. Russia has been tightening its military grip around Ukraine since last year, amassing tens of thousands of troops, equipment and artillery on the country's doorstep. In the video above, Vladimir Putin speaks out on tensions in Ukraine. The aggression has sparked warnings from U.S. intelligence officials that a Russian invasion could be imminent. In recent weeks, whirlwind diplomatic efforts to diffuse tensions failed to reach a conclusion. Moscow has repeatedly denied it is planning an assault, insisting instead that NATO support for Ukraine constitutes a growing threat on Russia's western flank. An escalation in shelling in eastern Ukraine and a vehicle blast in separatist-held Donbas has heightened fears that Moscow could be stoking the violence to justify an invasion. The escalation in the years-long conflict between Russia and Ukraine has triggered the greatest security crisis on the continent since the Cold War, raising the specter of a dangerous showdown between Western powers and Moscow. So how did we get here? The picture on the ground is shifting rapidly, but here's a breakdown of what we know. More than 150,000 Russian troops now encircle Ukraine like a horseshoe on three sides, according to estimates from US and Ukrainian intelligence officials. The White House has repeatedly warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin could launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine at any moment. On February 15, Putin claimed that he was pulling some troops back to base after completing drills and was open to a diplomatic route out of the standoff. But the claim was met with skepticism from Western officials, followed by frustration as the US alleged that rather than drawing forces down, Russia was quietly mobilizing several thousand more. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken cautioned that America had seen no immediate sign of a Russian military pullback, noting, "Unfortunately, there's a difference between what Russia says and what it does." NATO has raised the readiness of its Rapid Response Force, while member countries put troops on standby and deployed battalions, planes and ships to the region. The US ordered 3,000 additional soldiers to be deployed to Poland, bringing the total number of reinforcements sent to Europe in recent weeks to about 5,000. The US says it has no intention of sending troops into Ukraine, which is not a NATO member. Biden and European leaders have warned that Russia would suffer serious consequences, including sanctions, should Putin move ahead with an invasion. But that has not stopped Russia from continuing to bolster its military positions. In late 2021 and early 2022, satellite images revealed new Russian deployments of troops, tanks, artillery and other equipment cropping up in multiple locations, including near eastern Ukraine, Crimea and Belarus, where its forces were participating in joint drills with Moscow's closest international ally. Despite receiving funding, training and equipment from the US and other NATO member countries, experts say Ukraine would be significantly outmatched by Russia's military, which has been modernized under Putin's leadership. If an all-out war broke out between the two countries, tens of thousands of civilians could die and up to 5 million made refugees, according to some estimates. What has set the stage for the conflict? Ukraine was a cornerstone of the Soviet Union until it voted overwhelmingly for independence in 1991, a milestone that turned out to be a death knell for the failing superpower. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, NATO pushed eastward, bringing into the fold most of the Eastern European nations that had been in the communist orbit. In 2004, NATO added the former Soviet Baltic republics Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. 4 years later, it declared its intention to offer membership to Ukraine someday in the distant future, crossing a red line for Russia. Putin has indicated he sees NATO's expansion as an existential threat, and the prospect of Ukraine joining the Western military alliance a hostile act. In interviews and speeches, he has emphasized his view that Ukraine is part of Russia, culturally, linguistically and politically. While some of the mostly Russian-speaking population in Ukraine's east feel the same, a more nationalist, Ukrainian-speaking population in the West has historically supported greater integration with Europe. In an article penned in July 2021, Putin underlined their shared history, describing Russians and Ukrainians as one people. Ukrainians, who in the last 3 decades have sought to align more closely with Western institutions, like the European Union and NATO,